Former acting DHS Secretary and Heritage Foundation visiting fellow Chad Wolf joins us right now to discuss. Chad, good morning to you.
Hey, good morning.
You know, it is troubling. Joe Biden told everybody, we got to mask up here in the United States indoors, even if you've gotten the vaccine. But it's, you know, it seems to be a real problem with the migrants coming into the country. They're bringing not only their families, but they're bringing COVID.
Well, absolutely. And what we've seen over the last 6 months is really two different standards, one for the American people and another for illegal immigrants who are coming across that border. And we see this not only in the state of Texas, but we see it all along the border, which is they're coming across and we've reinstated catch and release. They're catching them and then they are moving them to bus stations, to airports, and then they were releasing them into American communities, into border communities. Some are testing positive, some are not testing, some are choosing the vaccine, some are not choosing the vaccine. So it's a very dangerous situation, and governors like Governor Abbott in Texas are having to take matters into their own hand because the federal government's not doing its job in protecting American citizens.
Indeed. In fact, when you look at the number of cases reported among the detainees, there's been a 900% spike in detainees with COVID reported in the Rio Grande Valley sector. Chad, I wanted to ask you about a story we were talking about yesterday. Axios got their hands on some numbers that apparently 50,000 migrants have just been released into the interior of the United States with no notice to appear. Usually they're given a notice, hey, here's a paper, you got to go talk to your local ICE office. They've looked at it. Only 13% of the people who are now in the country actually went to the ICE office. But then again, if you break into a country illegally, why would people think that suddenly they're going to start obeying the law?
Well, you're absolutely right. And this is just another example in the absurdity of the crisis that's going on. They're so overwhelmed by the number of illegal migrants coming across every single month that they can no longer even process them. So instead of processing them and giving them a notice to appear or an NTA, they're simply in the front door and out the back door. And if you recall, several months ago, the Secretary of DHS got asked about this in congressional testimony, and he indicated that he was unaware that this was going on. But if it was going on, it was happening in such small numbers that it was more or less negligible. And of course, what we hear now, 50,000, and the show-up rate is such a small number. That's almost the exact same percentage of those showing up for court dates when they come into the U.S. for their asylum claim. Because we know if you have a valid asylum claim, you're going to want to show up for court. You're going to want to show up at a DHS or ICE facility because you get status. You get legal status here in the U.S. What we do know, though, is the vast majority never qualify. And so that's why you see these dismal show-up rates.
One other story I want you to respond to. There's a story now that apparently a couple of government whistleblowers who were volunteers at the child migrant facility at Fort Bliss, they have come forward and they said that the government, the administration, had this massive cover-up. We saw those thousands of kids in that facility, and we said at the time, it's got to be a super spreader event. Well, now it's coming forward that apparently the Biden administration did everything in their power to keep the number of sick kids out of the news. And these people have come forward and are spilling the beans. But nonetheless, it turns out hundreds. COVID was widespread among the kids, and it spread to many of the employees. The Biden administration didn't want that number out, didn't want those numbers out, because then it would become political.
Well, absolutely. What we've seen over, again, the last several months with this migrant housing crisis is a number of missteps by the administration. They've had to open up facilities and then close facilities in the state of Texas. Of course, the Fort Bliss facility that you're talking about, press has never been allowed in there, so you've never been able to see exactly what's going on. And so the fact that they're trying to hide numbers or downplay numbers is not surprising to me. And I think, but what is surprising is that other media outlets and other journalists are not covering this issue. And it is a huge issue. If you go back to 2018 and 19, when we had a crisis along that border, and we called it a crisis, we wanted to be upfront with the American people. We let them in. We let them into facilities so that they could understand what was going on.
Right. Well, it's a government cover-up alleged by these whistleblowers. Everybody should be covering that news. Chad Wolf, we thank you very much for joining us on this Thursday.
All right. Thanks.
You bet.